So have you used flower foam before? Well, there's just a few things that we need to talk about before you get stuck into the foam. You need to make sure you buy this green foam. That's the foam that takes up water. You can also get flower foam that you use for dried flowers, and that doesn't take up water. So just make sure you buy it dry, but it's green and it takes up water. If I slice a piece of the foam off, it makes a really satisfying crunch as you cut through it. And I'm just using an old table knife. And if you've not used the foam before, it's just quite nice to see what you're playing with, what you're using. But I don't know if you can see, I'm ending up with a little bit of grit on my fingers. And if you were to get that on your clothes, it does leave a green stain. It can be brushed off, but just to be aware that to be careful and make sure you're not wearing your best clothes when you're doing your flower arranging. Also, it's sponge-like. It takes up water as if it were a sponge. The difference with it, a sponge and the flower foam, is that with a sponge, if I squashed it, it would bounce back into shape. And this, if you overhandle it, you'll just end up crushing it and it doesn't bounce back into shape. So, it's one of those things you just need to be a tiny bit careful with. I'm getting a bit gritty with my hands now, not to be wiping your eyes or anything like that, because you'll find it's quite painful. Now here I've got some water. Now normally when I'm soaking my flower foam, I would fill an old washing up bowl with water. You end up with a slight sort of powdery residue at the bottom, so you may choose not to use your real washing up bowl. But you need quite a depth of water to allow the flower foam to sink down. Now the way you don't soak the flower foam, quite often you'll be tempted or see people just pushing the flower foam down, and you'll see that it's changed colour. Now if I was to cut that open with my knife here, you can see that inside it's still dry. So you can imagine as I was arranging my flowers, they would just be reaching this dry reservoir here. And that can be the reason why your flower arrangements will die off, because you've pushed the foam down. You really do need to let the foam soak down of its own accord. Now the next thing I'd advise you to do when you're using your flower foam is just cut off the amount that you use. Because what I don't use will stay dry and I can use that another time. If you were to soak the whole block, you would have to keep it moist, so it means putting it into a sandwich bag or sandwich box to keep it wet. You should never try and re-soak flower foam after it's dried out, because it doesn't take up water in the same way, and really not to reuse foam that's already been used for another arrangement, because it has lots of holes in it, and when you want to put your flowers in, you'll find that the perfect place, the hole is too big and it'll all slop sideways. So what I'm going to do here is to use my cup to make a template, and I'm going to lay that on the top. Now the thing you should notice with your cup is that the top surface is bigger than the bottom, so I'm going to have to do quite a lot of shaping. But before I do the shaping, I just need to get an idea of approximately how big the top surface of my foam needs to be. So to make that clear, I should turn that over, and a bit like using a pastry cutter, you're giving yourself a really good guideline there. And then with my knife, I can cut across, so I can save this bit of flower foam for later because that's perfectly dry. And then start to carve away. So I would start with taking away the corners. And then making my way round, following that template. So there's quite a lot of wastage here, but you could probably get away once you've done this a couple of times. See, the flower foam fits in, but it's a really snug fit, so I will need to take a bit more off there. You could probably get away once you've done this a few times by using perhaps just a cube of flower foam at the bottom, but you have to have sufficient flower foam so it wedges in place. We're not going to be taping the flower foam in because it's such a tiny container, you wouldn't want your foam to be hidden by tape. And what I've done here is taken another edge off but started to shape the flower foam in. So again, going back to the foam, it's too tall. You can see if I put the foam next to the cup, it's really tall. So what I should do now is line the two up together and push my knife across and just mark it a little bit to give myself another guideline. Bold and cutting it off. You may find that some of these pieces you could reuse for another project. So I'm getting there, it's starting to fit, but I do need to keep shaping round. So I will again work my way around just methodically. Don't need to rush this part of the arrangement. It's all part of creative outlet, and you know, making sure you've got all your materials right just from the beginning. So that's quite a good fit there. Now one thing I am going to do, I want my flower foam to be just a little bit under the height of the rim of the cup. I don't want my arrangement to be too big. I'm not going to be arranging anything that spills out over the side. It's just going to be a very neat arrangement, so I don't need to have any foam above the surface of the cup. And again, taking my knife, I can just mark the height there and come back in and slice all the way through and just have a fit. So I would say I'm pretty happy with that. It's fitting really snugly. It's not going to slip out. So I shall clear away these bits and bobs and then come back and show you how I soak my foam. So my flower foam is shaped the right size, and all I do is just drop it onto the surface of my water, and it will take a matter of seconds really. You could pop to the toilet, you could put the kettle on, ring a friend or text someone. It doesn't take very long at all. And you can see when it's drying out because it pops away, the dryness goes. And I can feel as I pick that up, it feels much heavier, and I'm confident that that's taken up as much water as it possibly can.